If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we are back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Jeff MD, our in-house CIA operative, and our good friend JJ Carrell, the most passionate man in the world when it comes to protecting our border. Good to see you all. We are going to discuss Donald Trump's flip-flopping on farm and hospitality workers tonight. JJ brought the topic to my attention, and I want to preface our conversation on that by saying Donald Trump is one man. He can't do everything. And I think JJ has some pretty good insight as far as people advising Trump that maybe aren't the highest caliber. But before we do that, we're going to go quickly to our conflicted question of the night. And all of us, better get everybody on stage here, all of us will answer that, meaning the panel will answer this at the end. But when forming a survival group, what structure of organization is best? Having one leader with people under the person at various levels, or having the entire group share leadership and responsibilities? Why? This is from the conflicted deck number 2, and it's called Survival Scenarios. So we're glad to be working with the conflicted the game once again. So before we get into this topic, which again JJ brought to my attention, there was an exchange in the Senate today that is absolutely hilarious. This is a 9-second video. I'm not going to preface it by saying anything else other than to say, God bless Pete Hegseth.
Time is up, Senator.
Oh, it is not up to you to tell me when my time is up.
Well, the time.
And I am going to say, Mr. Secretary.
We got to watch it.
I believe your time is up, Senator.
Oh, it is not up to you to tell me when my time is up.
Well, the time.
And I am going to say, Mr. Secretary.
I don't think there's any other way to talk to these people except that. Yeah, civility's gone. They hate America, and you need to talk to them that way, like they're the enemy.
Nobody would know that better than you, JJ. I mean, when you went to Congress to testify, share the experience with our audience, because I don't think we've actually discussed that on STN before.
No, well, I got asked to go testify in front of Congress about child sex trafficking from my documentary and my time in the Border Patrol, and it was an absolute waste of my time. They being the congressmen are either both sides, Republicans and Democrats, some of the dumbest people in our society and some of the most ineffective and corrupt people you'll ever meet in your life. I sat there and testified that there were thousands of unaccompanied alien children that have been gone missing, over 500,000 of them, and they're being raped right now. In fact, RFK Jr. came out 2 weeks ago in congressional testimony, and he did state exactly those facts under testimony that yes, 500,000 children are gone. They're being raped right now as we speak. And the congressman, the Republican congressman, hit the gavel and said, well, it looks like we're out of time. We're out of time. The biggest thing that was shocking to me was just going through the process of testifying. It's to kabuki theater. And on my right side on the dais, they sit above you, right? So they can look down on you peasants. And you have to hit a button to talk. And if the button's not green, you can't talk. So you just sit there and listen. So I had a Congresswoman, Dalia Ramirez from Illinois. And for 4 minutes of her 5 minutes, she just sat there and called me every name in the book, pulled up a picture of January 6th with the noose hanging down and made the insinuation that it came from my ex account. So she's making that connection, a big white guy in the news. I hate people of quote of color. And then she just slandered me for 4 minutes. But what she said, and this ties into everything that goes on in today's society, in politics, she got real emotional because we were talking about women being raped on the border and children. And she got real emotional. And I remember this it's in my book. I write a whole chapter on it. I stopped. I really got focused and I went, oh, she's getting real emotional. Let's focus, JJ, focus. Because I just was so tired by that time. I was like, I don't want to deal with these people anymore. I was like, focus, because when people get emotional, they make mistakes. Let's listen to what she's going to say. And I'm sitting there intent, and she gets real emotional talking about her mother crossing the border. And she says, my mother was raped crossing the border from Guatemala while she was pregnant with me. And I started hitting my button. Like, hey, any of you jackasses up there, any of you morons, do you understand that she just admitted in Congress that she's an illegal alien? She's an illegal alien. I have an illegal alien in Congress demeaning me, a veteran of the United States Border Patrol, and calling me all these racist names, and she's an illegal alien. I get done. I call somebody to do a cursory search. Hey, did this illegal alien naturalize sometime in her life? No, she never naturalized. Do you know who she's married to? She's married to a man that is a DACA, meaning he's an illegal alien. Her family members are illegal aliens, and we have her on the committee talking down to me. That is what it's like to go to Congress. That's why we have so much problems. Why are we going to war right now with Iran? Honestly, why are we going to war with Iran when you begin to understand that our congressmen and senators, there is a significant percentage of them that have dual citizenship with Israel? Holy mother of God. If you and I are going to be mad about Dalia Ramirez and her fat ass from Guatemala, I'm mad about Ilhan Omar, who is just a straight up straw man for Somalia. She just does everything for Somalia. Then I have to sit back and go, there's no difference between Somalia dual citizenship and Israel. Why are we allowing this? Do you know that Thomas Massey has put forth a bill to make congressmen and senators have to declare if they have dual citizenship? Do you know every time that bill comes up, they don't pass it? They kill it. People in our government have dual citizenship. That's unbelievable, guys.
I think Mayorkas would be a good example of this, right? So he was born in Cuba, naturalized American citizen, but also a dual citizen with Israel as well. And it's not just elected officials, it's people in cabinets, especially the Obama and the Biden cabinets. I mean, Jeff, you can speak to this better than I can. Go ahead.
Well, until the last couple of decades, it was illegal in the United States. Well, the United States did not recognize dual citizenship. You were either a citizen of the United States or another country. Dual citizenship, the concept, was not recognized under U.S. law. And that if you were from a foreign country and you became naturalized, you had to denounce your citizenship, to that foreign country. Why they changed that, I have no idea. Because I had a friend growing up whose dad was British, and he'd worked all over the world as a mining engineer, and he lived in the U.S., but he had a green card. His wife was an American. His kids were born here. They were all American, but he never had American citizenship. And the reason he didn't, he said, was because he did a lot of work overseas in Mexico and places like that. He goes, I'm a British subject, and as a British subject, I am, what it was for him is Britain did not tax you on earnings you earned outside of Britain. So when he made money in Mexico, he didn't have to pay British taxes on that. Well, the United States said, you got to pay U.S. taxes on any money you earn anywhere in the world. So he's like, anywhere I would go, I'd get double taxed. I'd get taxed by Mexico and the U.S. So, but there were advantages and disadvantages. But his wife was a U.S. citizen. His kids were U.S. citizens. But we did not recognize the concept of dual citizenship. And I kind of think we need to go back to that. You just one of those, sorry, you got to pick a side.
I need to do some more research on it too, because I'm like you. Because this is recent.
Yeah, this is the last.
Jeff, yeah, this is not.
Years.
Yeah, this is not like 100 years ago. This was. I remember that you couldn't be a dual citizen. There was nobody acknowledged that. It didn't exist. It wasn't, that term just somehow kind of sprung out of nothing. And all of a
Yeah,
sudden we have dual citizen. Like, what are you talking
if
about?
you were a Mexican national and you got naturalized in the United States, you had to renounce your Mexican citizenship.
Yes.
You had to say, I'm not Mexican anymore. I'm an American.
I think there's an argument to be made that this is also purposeful. This
Well, I
way
think
they
it
can
is.
balkanize us.
Because you get people, okay, Israel's a great example. If nothing against Israel or Jews, but Israel has this thing, if you're Jewish, we will give you citizenship. You know, whether you've ever lived here, had anything to do with Israel, and a lot of that's a holdover from, you know, the Holocaust and World War II. But what that did is it gave an out to Americans who may have been Jewish or married to a Jewish person, that they got in trouble with the U.S. and, you know, legal trouble in the U.S., they would flee to Israel and claim their Israeli citizenship, and then Israel would deport them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just an out for criminals, basically. Because if you're not a criminal, you don't need dual citizenship.
Right. Good point. So since you opened this can of worms, JJ, I mean, I know we want
Way to go, JJ.
Well, it always
Look, man,
happens.
we are living in unprecedented times.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm coming on to your show tonight, and I'm right before I'm coming on, I'm scrolling. I'm looking at things, and I'm just like, holy cow. I mean, within an hour, everything changes. Like another giant story comes up, and then another giant. The news cycle has gone now to about a 4 to 6 hour rotation.
Only 4 or 6 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, look at the biggest story outside. I think it's even bigger than Iran. The story that, yes, the 2020 election was stolen and they used it through China, and no one's talking about it. Think of that. That story, the demented old racist that lost to run for president at least 3 times, a plagiarist. Everyone know that he was one of the dumbest men in Senate, and he got 20 million more votes than anyone in the history of the United States of America.
Yeah, it's bullshit.
God.
So again, you open this can of worms, which is good. And I'll repeat what I said before we went live, just for the audience's knowledge. So we prepare a brief every single day for whoever's going to be on Survival Dispatch News. It has links to everything that we're going to show, or at least some of what we're going to show, with some commentary. And JJ is one of my favorite people. I've lost track of how many times he's joined us, and not once have we ever followed the brief. Not even close.
I'm sorry.
No apology necessary. I actually love it because the conversation is very genuine. It's authentic, and it's organic. So listen to this one here. I'll go get through this as fast as I can. So Biden's cabinet, okay? How many of those people were Jewish and held Israeli passports? You ready for this? Anthony Blinken, David Cohen, CIA Deputy Director, Merrick Garland, Avril Haines, Director, who was the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, Ronald Klain, Chief of Staff, Eric Lander, Office of Science and Technology Policy Director, Richard Levine, I will not call a dude Rachel, Richard Levine, Deputy Health Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, Ann Neuberger, National Security Agency Cyber Director, Wendy Sherman, Deputy Secretary of State, Janet Yellen, Treasury Secretary. And that is just in a very quick cursory search. But all of those people from that cabinet have sworn an allegiance to Israel in addition to America and carry their passport. I would like to know when and how it changed myself, because it was standard practice in years gone by. You had to renounce your citizenship and your loyalties to other countries.
If there's ever an example of why you should have to renounce your citizenship, it's Rosie O'Donnell. She moved to Ireland. She should have to renounce her U.S. citizenship so we can refuse to let her back in.
Yeah, Conor McGregor saying that if he wins the leadership race in Ireland, we have to take Rosie back. So
no, I'm going to contribute to his opponent, no matter who it is.
I love
for that
Conor
reason
McGregor.
alone. I don't want.
But yeah, we draw the line at Rosie O'Donnell.
It
for
should
sure.
be, if you're going to be an elected official in the United States or appointed to the cabinet where you have to go through, congressional confirmation, you should only have one citizenship.
Yeah.
Period. Ours. And if you're unwilling to renounce your citizenship to whatever country, then you're disqualified.
Could not agree more. So JJ, while we're on this topic now, and I suspected that it was probably going to come up tonight, and you touched on it, the war that's going on between Israel and Iran. Give me your thoughts on that. And you're in good company, by the way, because I'm with you. I don't support this crap at all. I'm a libertarian, lowercase L. I don't want anything to do with all this crap in the Middle East. But go ahead, the stage is yours.
Well, I have a litmus test that I always follow, because my son is almost about 4 years away from being 18, and any kind of world war, and he gets brought in. My litmus test is this: if I was president, would I send my son in to fight that war? And if the answer is no, then I'm not sending anyone else's son. My son is not going to fight for Israel and Jews. Not going to happen. He's not going to go to Ukraine and fight the Ukrainian or against Ukrainian Christians or Jews. If we were living in America and Canada gets taken over by China, I will go to the border and help fight for America. But I'm not going to Canada and dying for Canada. I'm not. And I'm not going to have my son do it. And the idea that we are somehow tied to Israel. Look, I don't know if you saw the Tucker Carlson interview with Ted Cruz, and I like Ted Cruz, but he sounded asinine. He sounded absolute asinine. You know who he sounded like? And I'd like to hear you guys' opinion on this. Remember when George Bush said that God told him that he has to go to Iraq? Right then, when anyone says God speaking to them, I immediately recoil, especially someone like Bush. Now, Ted Cruz is saying, well, what influences his vote to go to war is because the Bible says that we have to back Israel. What the hell is going on? What in God's name are you talking about, Ted Cruz? There's no, number one, I'm so tired of Christians and evangelicals destroying God's word and making it sound as if I have to go and send my children to die in war for Israel. Are you insane? Where in the Bible does that say? I'm not a theologian, but I'm not an idiot either. It doesn't say that I have to send my son into a meat grinder because some Jews in Israel tell me that God said so. Not going to happen. Do you guys think I'm off base there?
No, I think those are some pretty outrageous claims. And before, Jeff, I'm going to let you answer that, but I do want to share this here from Cowboy Roy Rogers. Does that mean I can't be a U.S. politician because I'm Texas? So some of y'all have heard this before. One of the questions I used to love to ask, especially when there were Yankees in a meeting, I would ask them, how many states are there in the United States of America? And of course, they'd say there's 50 states. I go, nah, just one, just Texas.
Oh God. We need to talk about that before the show's over too. You guys are oh God.
Hey, we're the only state in the nation that has a piece of paper saying we can leave at any time we want. But Jeff, let's circle back on JJ's comments, because I agree.
Should we put a single trooper into Iran? Absolutely not. Now, am I thrilled at the concept of Iran having nuclear weapons? No. Would I be totally opposed if they dropped a couple bunker busters on Fornow? No, not really. But do we need to follow up with the land invasion? Absolutely not. If the idea is to keep them from having an atomic bomb, which is probably good because they're psychopaths, we can do that and not have to put a single troop on the ground. And people say, well, it'll devolve into chaos. Yeah, it ain't our chaos. Sorry, I don't want another Afghanistan. What we should have done in Afghanistan was killed the Al Qaeda guys and then say, that's our objective. We did it. We're done. We're not in here to rebuild your nation. We're not in here to give you clean water and drill wells and build schools. We're not here to make your life American, because you're not American. You figure your shit out. You screw with us, we're going to nuke you into the Stone Age, just to let you know. But other than that, you're on your own.
No, I agree with that. I don't. How about this novel approach? How about we stop going over to the Middle East and blowing them up, and then be shocked that they hate us, right? I always love to quote flip the script. Let's say Iran had the power, And they came over here and they bombed us to smithereens. And they said, you're going to have Sharia law. Your women are going to be in burqas. What would the three of us do? We'd be waiting for nightfall, and we'd be going all through our cities and towns and killing as many Iranian soldiers as we can. Why is it shocking to us that those people want to kill us to get them out of their country? It makes, and why should the world, why should America push, quote, democracy, which we're not a democracy, and have this idea that we're the best country in the world? Are we the best country in the world? I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But if you believe in MAGA, which I do, make America great again, then you have to understand what that means. That means that we're not great now. And as a patriot, and it pains me to say this, we're not great. We're the number one consumer of child pornography in the world. We're one of the top nations that pays money to rape children in the world. We're the number one consumer of cheap slave labor. We are the number one exporter of pornography in the world. We are the number one nation that consumes hard narcotics. Do you think the cartels just push that stuff to us because we don't want it and they just need some place to push it? Or maybe, just maybe, America is fallen so far down the moral cesspool that we are the country that demands all those products, and they are just like Amazon, and they're just delivering it to us. We need to look in the mirror, America. We're the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, they couldn't sell drugs if there weren't buyers.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're buying. And I'm one of these, it's like, Iran does Iran. Now, when they threaten us, that's a different issue. When they're saying, "Oh, you're the great state, we're gonna wipe you off the face of the earth," it's like, okay, now you've crossed the line.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to eliminate your ability to do that. But you need to, like I said, you need to do you. You need to figure your shit out. And it's not us to tell you what is the right way. But if you elect a government that is publicly saying we're going to wipe out the great state in America, it's like, well, okay, maybe we'll wipe you out first. And the Iranian people need to get their act together, and at some point they need to say, is this what we want to be? And if it's not, overthrow it. We did it. We kicked out the British. They were the biggest, most powerful nation in the world. We kicked their asses out.
Let's back up just for a second here, Jeff. So think back to approximately, I want to say maybe a year and a half ago, and we had JJ Carrell on, and then we had Victor Avila on, and back to back, they both told our audience and us, which was a real eye opener for me, that we are the number one consumer of child sex trafficking.
Yeah.
And then I specifically remember asking this question when I think it might have been Victor in that case was discussing us exporting children who were, basically captive in child sex trafficking. And I said, are you telling me that it's easier for these cartels and gangs to bring children into America and then sell them globally around the world instead of going directly from point A to point B? And Victor Avila, JJ, his exact words were, yes.
Well, yeah, because you have to also understand when you look at let's move the unaccompanied alien children to the side just for a second, okay? And that's something that we need to discuss, okay? This has to be discussed. But when you look at how many children, do you know what the number of children lost in America is? Do you know the range they give? They don't even give you our government counts everything down to the minute detail. Do you know what the range they give us? 400,000 to 800,000 children go missing every year in America. 400 to 800,000. That's how do you even how's that even acceptable? And I asked a guy that did this, that was in this world. He goes, they do it on purpose because they don't want you to know how many children. So I like to play this game. Let's say that it's the bottom. It's 400,000 children. And let's say 90% are runaway kids and they find them, they bring them back to home. That's still 40,000 children a year just disappear into space, never to be found again. Do you understand what 40,000, the number 40,000? There are towns and cities that don't have 40,000 people in it. What if the government's 99% wrong? What if all the children are just runaways and we come back? You still lost 4,000 effing children and you don't know where they are. They disappeared. I'll tell you where they are. They're in dungeons being sex trafficked. They are being flown overseas to be sex trafficked. And no one wants to talk about this, because our bodies are considered to be less parasitic, those children's organs are harvested and sold on the black market across the globe.
Yeah.
In America. America.
So listen to this one, JJ. I've mentioned this before on SDN, but I don't think I've mentioned it to you before. So I'm sitting in my office in Gainesville, Florida, not that many years ago, and we had 3 separate buildings, and the middle building was the executive building, and I just so happened to be the only executive in the building at that point in time. And these 3 cops walked by me, plain clothes but badge on the belt and sidearm. They turn around, they come back because my door was open. I said, "Can I help you all with something?" And they said, "Yeah, we're with the Amtrak police." And I was like, "You're with who?" And the guy says, "Amtrak." He said, "I know, nobody knows it. We've got about 40 agents across the entire country. Nobody's ever heard of us." I said, "Well, what can I help you with?" He said, "That strip plaza next door," he said, "we see that you have a small retail store over there. Is there any chance that we could set up some surveillance equipment over there? We're investigating your neighbor." So there was a CPA next door who also offered bookkeeping services, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, "Yeah, sure. No problem." And then they said, "We see you got those box trucks outside. Is there any chance we could borrow one of the box trucks? Could you just park it over there and let us in it?" I said, "Yeah, we can arrange that. No problem." 2 days later, like not even 48 hours, they come back and they said, "We want to thank you all for your assistance. We've been tracking this guy beside you for 2 years now." So on the backside of the strip plaza was an old Florida motel, probably built in the 50s sort of thing, right? And this CPA guy had trafficked over 120 children, and they rescued 40 children in that 48 hours. They used our facility and that truck to gather the final bits of intelligence, and they literally walked next door and rescued those children. You want to talk about like a wake-up call, JJ. I'm sitting here, like, Gainesville is a blue dot in a red state, but there's a fair bit of money in Gainesville. It's a nice place other than the Democrats, but it was like, are you kidding me? Like, I walk across the parking lot over to that retail store at lunch all the time just to shoot the shit with the boys. And it was unbelievable to me that literally not 100 feet away, there were kids being sex trafficked. That was my first exposure to any of this stuff. So if I was exposed to it like that, what's the totality across the country?
Well, the totality is that let's go back to unaccompanied alien children. The federal government has admitted that they lost 550,000. RFK Jr. testified in front of Congress and stated this was unbelievable. I knew it. I have it in my documentaries, but to have someone actually validate what I've said when it's this damning, he said over 500,000 children were trafficked by our government. And he said our government is the largest child sex trafficking organization in the world. And our government trafficked 500,000 kids, and we can't find any of them.
I've asked you this before. I've asked our good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, and I've asked Victor Avila this question. So I'm going to ask it again, but you've answered it already. If the government says it's 550,000, what's the real number?
The real number, I would feel absolutely confident stating that the real number in the last 4 years under Joe Biden, it could be anywhere from 1.5 to 2 million.
It's incomprehensible. That number is just incomprehensible.
Well, think about this for a second, guys. If you're the drug cartels, which took over the human smuggling, and you were able to push children across the border day after day after day, and those children were then transported by the federal government back to you in the States, why would you not continue to do that? Well, you couldn't do it because you couldn't overload the system. So they were pushing as many kids across the border, and at the same time, they were smuggling them through vans, 18-wheelers. So that is how large the demand for child sex consumption was in America. And the cartels were just loading up 18-wheelers, vans, trunks, jamming kids in there as much as they could and getting them into America because America was demanding so much sex with children. Let me give you an example. There's a called the Shepherd's Watch, is a private organization in Texas that just focuses on child trafficking, human trafficking in Texas. And I asked them, what's the difference between Trump and Obama and Biden? And he said, well, under Trump, it was normally just black and white children, some Hispanics, and then we had a caseload that was robust, but we had a control. When Biden came in, because of 180 different nationalities came across the border out of 195 nations, they said it was a smorgasbord of races and ethnicities. And then our caseload, we couldn't control it. It was just it was everywhere. We could not control it.
So let me get some clarification from you on that. And Jeff, feel free to jump in here. So just quickly, number one, both you and Victor Avila were the first two that educated me as far as TDA bursting onto the scene, Trenda Araguen, that their primary means of making money was child sex trafficking. I had just assumed that it was drugs, which was an eye-opener. But explain how the process changed when the Biden admin was installed as far as dealing with unaccompanied minors. And let me preface that by saying that I think we had this discussion offline maybe 6 months ago or something like that. And you basically said, yes, this is happening, but you want to hear something unbelievable for our audience. Check this out. If I'm understanding things correctly, the people at the border who were processing these kids were given a short period of time. I don't know how many hours it was, 48,
72 hours. Okay.
So call it an underling went to a manager and said, this child, we're sending them to this address, and we've already sent 50 children to this address. It seems kind of fishy. Shouldn't we look into this? And the manager said, absolutely not. And the person said, well, why not? This looks like child sex trafficking. And the manager supposedly said, yeah, but those people don't ever make any complaints or file anything additional work for us. So we just send the kids there and we wash our hands of it.
That was either Deborah White or I'm so sorry, I forgot her name. Tara Rodas. That was under congressional testimony. They swore an oath that this is the truth. I've spoken to both women. I know exactly what's going on. Let me just, your audience understands. So the drug cartels never, ever, ever dealt with human smuggling because it's dirty. You don't want to deal with it. It was sophomoric. They hated the human smugglers. But because Joe Biden removed Border Patrol agents from the border and then took the transportation part of it away from the smugglers, meaning you lose a child, you lose a product traveling right across the country. So what would happen is the cartels would take a child from Central America all over the country, and they would rape the child or sell the child's body all the way up to the border. And then they would push the child after it's been anally and vaginally raped over and over and over again. They put a lanyard on their across their neck, or literally staple a piece of paper to their shirt saying, this is the name of the sponsor and this is the address. Border Patrol gets the child. We then, within 72 hours, have to turn it over to HHS or ORR, who then turns it over to Catholic Charities, Jewish Family Services. Many times we wouldn't even go to HHS because we had so many people. We'd push the child to the NGOs. Before I go, let me go back and have your audience understand how the context of this. So under Trump, it was so heavily regulated. It was so process and procedure had to be followed. There had to be DNA testing, background checks, sponsorship checks, home visits, on and on and on. So it was very, very regulated. I think Donald Trump's last year in office was my second to last year. I think we had about 20,000 unaccompanied alien children. That's a lot, I know, but we were dealing with Obama-era policies still. 20,000. How many did Joe Biden have in his first year? 140,000. And what did he do? He stopped all DNA testing. There was no background checks. There was nothing. And this is congressional testimony. What
was the quick DNA process, JJ?
Well, if because the cartels rent children, and because Obama said you can't separate families, if you can imagine this, so they would drug up these children and rent them to men, single adult men. Men would actually carry the child like a sack of potatoes and then walk across the border with them, get released into America because it's a family unit. And then they would turn the child back to the cartels. The cartels would bring them and do it all over again. So we'd see the same kid over and over and over and over again. So go to present day under Joe Biden, and now the cartels gave it to Catholic Charities, Jewish Family Services, whoever, with coordination with ORR, would literally call. This is how it would go. Sponsor so-and-so. Are you waiting for a 5-year-old Guatemalan boy named Juan? Yes, I am. Okay. He'll be there in 48 hours. We would fly Juan to wherever the cartels wanted him, and then we would release him to the cartels. When you talk to the called escorts, they were uneducated people that were responsible for flying with kids of opposite sex all across the nation, staying in hotels with them, all that. They would say, when I got to the baggage claim, we would do the transfer. And do you know what the transfer was? Chris, if I was the sponsor, I didn't even have to be there to take the kid. You would go pick up the kid, and you would have a copy of a birth certificate or a foreign document. Didn't have to have a picture on it. And that was good enough for me to turn the kid over to you. And the rule was, as long as the birth certificate or the ID was not 2 years removed from being expired, then you turn them. And the rule was, do not come back to the facility with the child. And I asked several people that did this, I said, what were you doing? Well, I was trafficking children. That was absolutely what I was doing. This is about money. Let me have your audience understand. One guy was an escort, and he's telling me how much he made. He said, under Donald Trump, I could barely make my ends meet, and I was going to have to quit. The day Joe Biden came into office, he said, I worked every single day of the month and every month of the year, nonstop. I said, well, you went from making no money. How much money did you make under Joe Biden? He has a GED. He said, I made $6,000 to $7,000 a week. A week. So if he's making $350,000 a year, the NGOs were making at least double that. At least double that. We're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars given to NGOs. Our government trafficked children. RFK Jr., he's not some mid-level HHS employee. He runs HHS. He stated on congressional testimony that our government was the largest child sex trafficking organization in the world. And nobody said a damn thing. They can't find the kids, Chris. Chris, they have not found one child yet. They have not found, they don't have a task force, Chris. Don't you think this would be an emergency situation?
That leads me to my next question. So in January, there were reports that 80,000 of the missing children had been found.
Uh-huh.
And then
you see a picture of it, Chris?
There was never another word. There was never another word.
Of course there was no other word, because it was a lie. Fox News ran it, and then they pulled back right away. And I remember thinking, 80,000 kids? Okay. Where in the hell are the pictures? You're telling me you're rescuing 80,000 kids, and there's no, you know how many 80,000 is? You don't have any pictures of these kids being rescued? You didn't rescue any kids, and then it died. They haven't got any kids. There's no kids. And I'm going to tell you where they are. Donald Trump has said it over and over and over again. I'm quoting, a lot of them are already dead.
That's where I was going next. And I want to hear from Jeff, because Jeff worked the Texas border while he was in the CIA for a period of time. But do some quick math for us. Actually, first and foremost, the quick DNA test, who instituted that? And it was like 20 minutes or something. You could tell if a minor was related to the person who was saying that they were the father, the uncle, the brother, right? 20 minutes.
Very quick. And then
where did that come from? Who instituted that? That
was Donald Trump. And then Biden canceled it. He canceled the contract. Why would you cancel the contract?
Well, the answer
why. Right? Yeah.
So I want you to do some math, and then I want to pivot to Jeff. But we had another discussion way back when. What is the revenue generation per child brought into child sex trafficking for the cartels and TDA, etc.? And refresh my memory. Is the average lifespan 3 years for a child who's been sex trafficked, and then they're either worn out and killed or they commit suicide? Like, there was a time frame when they're done, but during that 3 years, if that's the number that they're actively being sex trafficked, how much revenue do they generate for these bags?
It's about 18 months to 3 years, and if you can't get them within 18 months, they're gone. They're dead. You'll never find them. The average they're saying now is between $200,000 and $250,000 a year for one body. Because when I sell cocaine or heroin and I cook it up and I shoot it in my veins or I snort it, it's gone. But I can take little Juan, 5 years old from Guatemala, and I can have his body service men up to 20 times a day. I don't care about Juan. I don't care that we just ripped his anus apart. I don't care that his mouth has sores in it. I don't care that he has STDs flourishing all over his body and he has sores. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to drug him up, and then I'm going to film him having sex with men up to 20 times a day, and then we'll just rape him till he dies. I will put a 13-year-old girl, and I'll put her in a hotel, and I'll train her. Look, I said this yesterday, and I think if you give me a minute, I think this is important, because when we talk about this, it's so grotesque, we can't really even conceptualize it. Okay. So I said to my audience last night, and I'll bet 50%, 60% were women. And I said, let's make this real. Let's make this real so there's no disconnect. I said, the women here and the men, you have wives and you have daughters and you have mothers. If a woman is raped one time in her life, that woman's life prior to that rape day is gone. We can agree to that woman's life has forever changed. She's never coming back. Will God heal her? Prayers? Yes, I agree with all that. However, she is never the same woman. And us three can't understand that really, because we're not women. So we don't know what it's like to be violated in that way and have your soul ripped from you. And I said, as terrible as that is, ladies, what if I told you when you came to the police station to file your report that day as you're beaten up and you have tears on your vagina, you have scratches all over your body, your face got punched. What if I said, I'm sorry, you're going to have to go back to where the rape occurred, and we are going to allow you to be raped for as many times as up to 20 times a day for the next year. I said, try now to wrap your brain around that. And you should see everybody's face. They were like, I go, that's what we're talking about here. They're not making love to these children. They're punching them in the face. They're burning them with cigarettes. They're ripping their bodies apart. And I want your audience also to understand, and Avila will tell you this, and everyone that's in this business, because I asked them point blank. I didn't want to ask them, but I asked them, what does it look like? Like, I want to know what it looks like, because I want to be able to articulate this to people. And they said, do you understand what a grown adult man with an erect penis trying to insert that into a young girl that's 3 years old? Do you understand it doesn't fit? Do you understand that? And do you understand what that damage looks like when it's done? And I'm sitting there listening to these men and these women tell me these stories, and all I can think about is my country is doing this. My government is facilitating this shit. And everyone knows it. I testified in Congress. Prior to that, at least 6 times they had the same damn committee talking about the same damn thing, and nothing gets done. You would think this would be a priority, right? You think this would be a priority in America. America, you just allowed your government to traffic over 500,000 children. 500,000 children. They can't find them. They're gone. And nobody does or says a damn thing. I said this. If I had Trump's ear, I would say you're going to do something. You're going to shut the border down. You're going to go and you're going to hunt with military, and you're going to hunt all these illegals and get them the hell out of the country. And at the same time, you're going to give somebody a child sex trafficking czar, and he's going to go across America and make coalitions with state and local law enforcement. And you're going to have the largest manhunt for these children, and you're going to find every single child. And I don't care if you have to take 250,000 shovels and dig the shallow graves up of these children. You are going to find them. But we don't. It boggles my mind that we don't have anyone looking for these children. More or less all our children. But I'm talking about we facilitated. Look, let me tell you how high this goes up. Ryan Matta, who is my business partner on my documentary, he's an incredible documentarian, goes down to Guatemala, determines that 42% of all of the children that were trafficked into America came from Guatemala. You know the statistical probability of that is 0? 42. Guatemalan Attorney General goes and raids 6 NGOs. The number one NGO that was trafficking children, Save the Children. Do you know who was on the top of their board for years? Her name is Dr. Jill Biden.
Wow.
And do you know what happened when that first came out? Guess who shows up about 2 weeks? I interviewed the lawyer that's suing for this from Guatemala. Do you know who shows up about 10 days later? Anthony Blinken. And do you know what he says? I want the attorney general fired for corruption. Now, what happened that mirrors the exact same thing in Ukraine? Joe Biden shows up and says, I want that attorney general fired. Right. They were covering it up. What if, let me just ask you in your audience this, what if Melania Trump was on a board of a major NGO in Slovenia, and that NGO was discovered to be a child sex trafficking organization? Do you think we would ever hear the end of it?
Oh, God, no.
Ever? So I'm telling your audience today, Jill Biden was on the board of one of the NGOs that the government of Guatemala believes is the number one child sex trafficking mechanism that is taking their children and pushing them into America, and they're gone.
Let's quickly remind our audience, you can go to thisistreason.com. So JJ and Ryan, they put hundreds of thousands of dollars into this project, their own money. And the original goal was to, create a documentary on this stuff, but they ended up with so much footage. They actually had to do 2 documentaries. And you can go to thisistreason.com, which I've got on screen right now. It's phenomenal movie making. If you turn away literally for 10 seconds, you will miss so much information. Ryan's an incredible editor. I would say, JJ, I have a very little bit of experience editing this stuff. If I were to have edited it, it would have been like 5 documentaries, not 2. But Ryan's so good at communicating a massive volume of information quickly. So again, we're not on topic, and that's okay. We're not going to stay on topic, but this is treason.com. It's important stuff. Jeff, I'm sorry, that I haven't come here for a little bit here, but one, I'd like you to comment on the stuff that JJ has brought up and anything else that you feel is relevant in your time helping to protect our southern border.
Well, as a father and a grandfather, it's disgusting. And it's times like this, and I'm not advocating violence, but in a way I am. It's just like you want summary executions for people like this. You catch a guy raping a 3-year-old, just put a bullet in his head.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't deserve a trial. He's guilty. It's obvious. There's no excuse for that. And and it will not stop until there are serious, and by serious I mean lethal, repercussions. And this is in the good old days of public executions. My grandfather, who was born in 1899, took me deer hunting as a kid. We went by this tree in Arkansas, and he goes, I saw my first hanging in that tree. And it was a guy who had raped his own daughter, and when caught, admitted it. And they said, well, he's admitted it. There's no point in having a trial. They just strung his ass up. But you know what? The message got out. You don't screw with kids.
Mhm.
And we need more of that.
Now, Jeff, when were you down on the Texas border?
I was there from 2013 to 2016.
Okay. So did your experience mirror mine? Whereas people say, well, did you see all this child sex trafficking? And I would say, no, I saw some child sex trafficking, but we never saw any of this. This is a phenomena caused by the open borders. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were issues with the borders. There were people coming across, but back then, Border Patrol was allowed to stop them. And you know, I see everything through their eyes. I wasn't actually on the border working. I mean, I was down there with Border Patrol, and I would listen to them and talk to them. We were primarily looking at interdiction of, you know, potential terrorists and, you know, weapons coming across, that kind of thing. But they would take me along the border, and they would show me where, yeah, there'd just be, you know, this area where there'd just be just hundreds and hundreds of articles of clothing where they would come across the border, change clothes, and then be gone. We went up and down, you know, down Laredo. We went on the Rio Grande in the airboats, you know, and you know, they're all wearing body armor and we're not. We're like, okay, why are you wearing body armor? Oh yeah, they'll take pot shots at us from across the river.
Yeah.
Oh great, good to know. I'm not wearing body armor. Thank you very much. But it was a wild, wild west then, and it got better under Trump, and then way worse under Biden.
Yeah.
But it was pretty scary.
Yeah, but I don't think people really know, Jeff, about the border because it's like a different world. It's like it's not part of America. It's not part of Mexico. It's like you're going to Mars, and it is the most hopeless, desolate, violent, grotesquely dirty place you've ever been to in your life.
Arizona, I mean, it's U.S. and Mexico separated by Afghanistan.
Yes, good description.
I've been to Afghanistan, and I know what that's like too. But yeah, it is. It's lawless. It is. People have no concept.
No, they don't.
You know, 100 meters, you're into Laredo proper, and it's, you know, it's Laredo, it's America. It's, you know, they've got cops and stuff.
Yeah.
But between Laredo and, you know, and Nuevo Laredo across the river, it's a combat zone.
Yeah, it's a war, and I tell people that you just have no idea. You just don't understand how violent, how hopeless that, and the border is a physical living being. Like you could feel the energy, and it's an energy of power, right? And strength, and it devours all the weak people, weak agents, the weak illegal aliens. Everyone gets devoured. It's like it's just the way it is, and only the strong survive, right? And the people that have the ability to be violent when the bell rings wins. Yeah. It's really that insane. And I loved it.
Downstream face first in the Rio Grande.
Yes, they do. And what people have no idea can get their brain around is Joe Biden literally removed all the law enforcement obstacles and allowed 30 million people to come into America. My number is 30 million. All my buddies that are on the border, their number is 30 million. The federal government that we know lies at nauseum has admitted to 18 million. They've admitted to 18 million. Donald Trump now is finally admitting that it's 21 million in 4 years. I'm telling you, we're going to get to 30 million, but we're now admitting 21 million.
Well, they're not counting gotaways because they have no idea how many gotaways there were, because if they got away, so you can't.
They got away.
Yeah,
you can't. I have never. I try to explain this to people. Never in our 100-year history did we ever do one thing that Joe Biden's administration made us do. Why? Because it was against the law. Alejandro Mayorkas, a naturalized citizen from the communist nation of Cuba, destroyed our border, destroyed it, and allowed 30 million people to come into America. That it's mind-boggling. And here's what makes me even more upset is I've listened to Donald Trump state openly that what Joe Biden did was treason. What Mayorkas and Harris did was treason. What they did for these children is a criminal. And yet, guys, not one SOB has been arrested. Why is that? Are we that incompetent as a group of politicians and law enforcement guys? Not one person has been arrested. Not one person.
Incomprehensible again is all I come up with. So we're getting close.
They tried to arrest the agents on horseback who were swinging.
Oh, yeah.
We're getting close to hitting top of the hour, but JJ, give me your comments on this Breitbart article. Promises kept. Trump blocked every border migrant in May. That's a pretty bold statement. Is that
That's
just
not true.
It's just metaphorical, or you roll with it?
It's not true, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you one guy to go look at on X named Hernando Arce. He's an investigative journalist that works the whole border, but focuses on San Antonio and that area. He has videos almost every day of family units and children being walked through airports and getting on planes and flying out. That means the same NGOs are still trafficking children. How in God's name is this still possible? Now, has he stopped the flow down to about 99%? Yes. But why are still people being led into America? Why? Why are we not have the border completely shut down? This is him, Hernando Arce, incredible investigative journalist. He is bold, man, and he films it. And so I'm not getting this. Like, I called Hernando just the other day and said, I'm looking at your videos, dude. Is this happening still? Yes, it is, JJ. Nothing's changed. It just slowed down. God almighty. And I'm not blaming Trump. Trump has like 800 million things on his mind. Who's advising him? Just like we didn't get to today. Who advised him to give a, quote, amnesty to farm workers and service industry people? Who in their right mind thought that was a good freaking idea? And they say, well, you know,
the hotel industry and the farmers.
Oh my God. And you say to yourself, wait a minute, but because people don't know the history, we have a system called the Bracero program. We used to bring in workers. Why doesn't the meatpacking and the big ag want the Bracero program? Because you have to pay them the proper wage. You have to pay Social Security. You have to pay workers' comp. You have to pay payroll tax. But
and
what do they?
Well, yeah, and you have to follow the rules.
Yes.
You have to apply, you sponsor them, you're responsible for them when they're here. You've got to make sure they leave at the end of their term. I mean, I'm from Arizona. We had people coming across for forever. They would live in Mexico, they would work in Arizona, they were seasonal workers, they would come work the farms in the Phoenix area, up in the valley. Sometimes they worked in the mines and then they'd go back. It was just labor crossing the border, but it was legal.
Yeah.
They had border crossing cars. They were part of the program, and the companies that sponsored them were responsible for them, paid their wages, paid their taxes, everything else.
And couldn't abuse them.
They want to skirt the system.
Yeah. And I'll give you a great example, because Donald Trump has came out and said, well, I was shocked when I watched it, and I went, I can't believe this. I'm this biggest supporter. What the hell are you doing, man? Mm-hmm. And people say, well, those are jobs that Americans won't do. I say that is bullshit. And I'll give you a great example. What happened this week when ICE raided a meatpacking plant in Nebraska and got 100 people out? Do you know what happened? Literally the next day, the room leading into the employment center was packed with U.S. citizens applying for those jobs, and they had to pay the proper wage.
Yeah.
Dear God, is it that obvious? And Donald Trump got bamboozled? Come on, man. Who's advising Donald Trump that was okay? They need to be fired.
Yeah. You just hit the nail on the head. When somebody says that these illegals are doing jobs Americans don't want to do, my response is always the same. No, they're doing a job that Americans won't do for pennies.
Right.
Yeah. It's all back to the money, right?
Yeah. Meatpacking, throughout the 50s and 60s was considered a good blue collar job. They were unionized. They had pensions. They paid wages commensurate with steel workers and auto workers. it was considered a good blue collar industry. And it only became the job for illegals when they quit paying decent wages.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has the price of beef stayed down? Yeah, no, I don't see any 25-cent hamburgers at McDonald's. So the price of meat's gone up, but it's not going to the workers.
No, and the idea, and I was in an interview where a guy actually tried to convince me that when the meatpacking plants save money on labor, they pass those savings on to the consumer. And I was like, dear God, I can't even I'm not having this conversation with you. This is beyond. This is retarded. I'm not having this discussion. The idea that corporations take savings on manpower and then they don't pocket it. You're an idiot.
Well, I grew up in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Across the river in Waterloo, there was the Raft meatpacking plant. It was huge. Pork processors, Spam, they did all that kind of stuff. And it was a huge plant, employed hundreds, if not thousands of people making good wages. It was a good blue-collar job. Yeah, that thing went out of business. And it didn't go out of business due to lack of demand. It didn't go out of business due to lack of inputs. I mean, hogs in Iowa are not hard to find. Beef in Iowa is not hard to find. It went out of business because they didn't want to pay the wages.
So, Jeff, do you remember back in the day when you were stationed in DFW that there was a large chain of lumber yards named Cashway by chance?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Cashway, yeah.
Yeah, so Cashway at the time were the predominant, like I'm going back 80s, 90s, the predominant lumber yard in the Midwest, especially in Texas. And we would pull up at 7 a.m. when the contractor desk would open, and there would be illegals lined up as far as you could see, and they would work for $5 a day. And I'm going back late 80s, early 90s. Yeah. But there's no way we could hire anybody to work for that kind of money. Now, it wasn't skilled labor, but still $5 a day. I can tell you as recently as 10 years ago, I could go to the Lowe's or Home Depot in Arlington, and there's a couple of them, and the phenomena still existed. They were still lined up as far as you could see first thing in the morning, but it was $20 a day instead of $5 a day. So not a lot of movement over the course of, a couple decades sort of thing. It's back to, they're not doing the jobs that Americans don't want to do. They're doing jobs for a ridiculous little bit of money that Americans aren't going to do, can't do. You can't even live on that kind of money sort of thing. But anyway, we're at top of the hour here, and I know everybody's got other things to do. So couple quick things because we didn't follow the brief like usual. We're going to do the conflicted question in just a second. But before we do that, I want to bring this up, jjcarrell.com. This is JJ's website. The developer did a fantastic job, by the way.
Thank you.
It honestly, really, really good job. So if y'all go to jjcarrell.com, it pulls together all of the things that JJ's done. There's a good picture of him when he was in his younger years there, by the way. So when you go there, you will also find links to his books on Amazon. So much like Jeff, JJ has written a couple outstanding books as well, bestsellers for that matter. Treason is his most recent one. Really, really good reading for those people who want to be educated on, the border in particular, the child sex trafficking, and all of the crap that goes with that. So quickly, just because we do have sponsors, and thanks to our sponsors and guardians, it gives me and the rest of our team time to bring you guys the truth on all sorts of different subjects. So I want to briefly mention that Woobin sent me this pre-release flashlight, the L3. There's a link in the description below, but I'm a flashlight snob, just to be clear on this stuff. And if you send me a flashlight and I have to, pat my belly, rub my head, and do 3 jumping jacks to get the dang thing to turn on, I'm going to throw it in the trash. This flashlight from Woobin, it's a decent size. I do not have small hands, so I like flashlights that have a bit of size to them. But check it out. It was just released today, literally. The Woobin L3. Links are down below. There's a discount code. I want to say it's a $60 flashlight, and you get it for $47, $48 right now. That's a good deal. CCW safe. I'm not going to get into all the reasons tonight because we're long on time, but by far the best self-defense coverage. If you have self-defense insurance, it is against the law to pay insurance benefits to somebody who has broken the law. 95% of criminal charges are pled out before they go to trial. Your attorney says, look, I know you're not guilty. Just take the plea. Don't risk going to jail for 30 years. The second you do that, you owe all of the money back to that insurance company that sold you self-defense insurance because of the law preventing them from paying you out. CCW Safe doesn't do that. They sell you membership benefits. Carnival is our new sponsor. I can't say enough good things about these guys. You're talking beef, pork, chicken, guaranteed 100% American, no mRNA in the meat, no antibiotics, grass finished, not just grass fed. Grass fed means they pump them full of grains the past few weeks and they have the same problems that non-grass fed animals have. Go to carnivalt.com, check out their stuff. You can stack it up, 25-year shelf life for meat. If you're tight on time and you like the convenience economy, you can get it delivered. Doesn't have to be in fridges. If you're a prepper here in the Southeast, it's hurricane season for us. You lose power for a week. Most people lose all of their meat in their freezer and fridge. If you have Carnival's freeze-dried meat on hand, you've got premium meat that you just reconstitute with whatever you want to marinate it in and water, and you're good to go. And last but not least, go to survivaldispatchnews.com, sign up for a free account, please. We are getting just flooded with complaints from our followers, especially on CommieTube, saying that y'all are not getting notified. And we see it because when we look at the stats on videos and it says between 0 and 1% of the views came from notifications, it's the number one way that they censor and suppress people like us. JJ as well, he's got as much experience as we do of being, squashed by big tech. So if you're not getting notifications, we figured we better take the bull by the horn. So when you go to survivaldispatchnews.com, sign up for a free account, you will get the Saturday watch guide in your inbox that has every video we've published. It's got the thumbnail, the title, the description, and the links to everywhere where you can watch it. And I can tell you right now, we instituted that over a month ago, and our view numbers have been climbing steadily since then because of people not getting notified. So all of that out of the way, let's talk a conflicted question of the night, get everybody's answer on this. When forming a survival group, what structure of organization is best? Having one leader with people under that person at various levels, or having the entire group share leadership and responsibilities, and why? Jeff, I'm going to go to you first. And I do want to say, Dano, not in the Lions Den, thank you very much for the $10 tip. We appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to hedge. I'm going to kind of go in the middle. I don't like the idea of a single leader, because if he turns out to be a whack job, then you're being led by a whack job. And I don't like the idea of everybody deciding everything, because that becomes mob rule. I would prefer like a council, an odd number, 3, 5 people, they vote, and then 3 out of 5, decide before you do anything, because it gives some moderation, because one person can be nuts and the mob can be nuts. Mm-hmm. But if you pick 5 experienced senior people with life experience and leadership experience, it's unlikely you're going to get 3 out of the 5 agree to do something really stupid.
I'm not surprised. Outstanding answer, Jeff, by the way. JJ, what are your thoughts? If you're first.
I agree with him. I agree with Jeff. Having one leader come out from like a small group or a medium-sized group, and you pick the wrong guy, then you're in trouble, right? So, and I don't want to. And let's say that I'm coming out of a tyrannical government. I don't want to find myself in a tyrannical small government, right? And then I'm fighting them too, or I just leave. So I think there has to be. But Jeff, as it grows, like we get another community, then another community, then another community comes together, then we're going to need a strong leader to lead us. That is over time, where we've seen them under pressure and say, okay, that person is someone that we can follow. But I do at the very beginning, I'm not leaving a tyrannical government to follow one other person. No, thank you.
look at the chiefs of staff, or there's chief of staff or the chairmen of the Joint Chiefs. There's always one guy in charge, but there's a group, and he's the main guy in the group. But he by himself does not have absolute authority over the rest.
No, I agree. I agree completely.
The fantastic answers from both of you. So I'm just going to add one quick comment that was very interesting.
But unless it's me, and then I can be the dictator.
Of course. But actually, you said something, Jeff, that tweaked me when you said an odd number like 5. So survival teams are typically 7 or less individuals. When you work in corporate America and you have an executive team, many times it's referred to as a Mars team, right? Like if you're going to Mars, you would pick your best lieutenants to go to Mars, astronauts, whatever the case may be. And the reason that 5 is interesting, because survival groups are 7 and below for a very specific reason. For whatever reason, once you cross that threshold, you end up with too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and you have a whole bunch of discord. So you can hold a survival team together with 5, 6, 7 people. Go to 8 or 9, the wheels are probably coming off. It applies to leadership, stuff like you just mentioned, Jeff. A council of 5, 6, or 7 people is still workable. But imagine that you get to 9, 11, 538, like that place in Washington, D.C. And what do you end up with? Factions. You always end up with factions.
I'm going to share my greatest gift of wisdom on you guys and everybody listening. I call it the 7-man rule. If you pick 7 people at random, one of them is bound to be an asshole.
Fair enough.
And that is why you see so many juries get hung 11-1, 10-2, because you got 2 whack jobs who are outside of the, sanity. And that it's really hard to get 12 sane people in a room.
That's well said.
At random.
I shall refer to that as Jeff's asshole rule. Dano, thank you for the additional tip. That is very kind of you. We appreciate it greatly. We will be back tomorrow night, most likely with our very good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Doc Pete Chambers, and a very large announcement. Knock on wood. Hopefully everything falls in place tomorrow. And if not, we will have Doc Pete on very soon, but I think it's going to happen tomorrow night. And it's really, really good news. And then Friday night, we'll be back with Patrick Byrne, incredible guy, former CEO of Overstock.com, Senate Intel Committee asset, had a front row seat to corruption like nobody else. He was the guy that Brennan gave the $20 million to and said, go bribe Hillary Clinton so we can have something to hold over her head. It's going to be a phenomenal conversation on Friday night. You don't want to miss it. It's right up there with JJ Carrell. He brings a ton of knowledge and passion to the table. That's it, JJ, as usual. Appreciate your time. Likewise, Jeff, you're an absolute asset to the team. This is Chris Evans signing off. God bless America, and enjoy the closing video.
Happy hump day.
If I was the deep state and I wanted to destroy America, I would rig the election with a puppet candidate, one that was so compromised that they would never say a word about it. I would create a false flag that allows for mail-in ballots. I would be in charge of the ballot counting machines. I would create a false flag to blame all who question the results of the election. If I was the deep state, I would prosecute anyone that went against me. I would sue and prosecute anyone that spoke up about the fraudulent election. I would use my powers to shut down all your internet businesses and bankrupt you. If I was the deep state, I would make everyone an example why you should never question a Democrat ever winning an election. I would imprison my foes. I would use my corrupt DAs and blackmailed judges to destroy you. I would make sure all crimes I ever committed never happened. I would prosecute my biggest competition. I would make sure they could never run for office ever again. If I was the deep state, I would convince everyone that Ukraine Nazis were good and women are men. If I was the deep state, I would own every politician that mattered. If I was the deep state, I would push my pedophilia ambitions on you. If I was the deep state, you'd question your sexual identity but not the medical establishment. If I was the deep state, you would fear to ever resist me. If I was the deep state, you would wish I was really the devil. If I was the deep state, I would say mission accomplished.